Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Today's topic is a very timely topic in the news, gun control. Where do we stand?
We're sitting
Yes.
right now though on this.
Okay. So, we know that a big part of the debate is based upon the Second Amendment, which I took the liberty of copying for you here. This is the First Amendment. You know, I always like when people quote, yeah, it says in Isaiah 27:24. What does it say in 23? Right? So the First Amendment, as we all should know, I wrote for us also, is that Congress can't make any law that establishes a religion or prohibits the free exercise of a religion, right? It protects freedom of speech, of the press, the right of assembly, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Fair enough. Second Amendment is that a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay, so this is mostly interpreted that, and was really instituted initially as part of the Bill of Rights, when I think it was King Louis, I forget which king it was in Britain, wanted to make sure George, that to strip all the citizens of their arms in order to maintain tyranny. And this is the protection of the individuals against a tyrannical government, to make sure that they have the right to protect themselves from a tyrannical government. So let's start to go through some of the sources that we see over here, and we'll see how the Torah views, first of all, this concept that's behind the amendment, and then also see how the Torah views the usage or the ownership of and the usage of guns in different situations. So first of all, in this week's Parsha, no less, we find Vayasev Elokim et ha'am derech hamidbar, the first of their Shmot, Exodus chapter 13. Vayasev Elokim et ha'am derech hamidbar yam sufa chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael meretz Mitzrayim. God circumvented the nation around by the Yam Suf, and v'chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael. And Chamushim, the children of Israel, arose from the land of Egypt. Now there are different explanations for Chamushim. Some explain it to mean a Chomesh, 1/5. The Medrash says 1/5 of the Jews left Egypt. 4/5, 80%, didn't leave Egypt. They didn't want to leave. They ended up dying during the plague of darkness. But the simple explanation is Chamushim is armed. Bnei Yisrael came out of Egypt armed, in order to be readied for battles that would follow on their way into and upon entering into the land of Israel. So right away we see that with all of the miraculous interventions that took place in our getting out of Egypt, nevertheless there was going to be the need for more conventional means of making our way through and entering the land of Israel. And if this is what we had, and the Pasuk makes a point of it, it doesn't seem to be something that is being condemned in any way.
So we started NRA? We started NRA?
Question. Being slaves in Egypt, where they got arms?
We cleaned out, we took a lot with us when we left Egypt.
Okay.
So presumably this was on our list.
We had rifles and muskets.
At the same time, we don't glorify weaponry in any way.
It's Esau stuff.
Right? Well, we'll soon see about that. The Pasuk in Shemot was talking about, this is Exodus chapter 20, the next source there, we're talking about building the altar in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. We make an altar of stones, you shall not build them of hewn stones. Right? It can't be rocks that were cut by any metal implement. lest you wield your sword upon it and desecrate it. Meaning, the altar is there in order to give life, in order to extend life. We can't use tools, vessels that are used to shorten life, to construct that which is meant to preserve and lengthen life. So we don't glorify it. And certainly we have the psukim in Yeshaya and Isaiah which speak about at the Messianic times, those that are quoted at the United Nations, of taking our swords into plows and plowshares, right, into hoes, right, etc., etc. Steve, yes.
What was, I just forget the word, the name, that worm that split the stones?
The shamir. Not related to Yitzchak. Yeah. Okay.
They only used something like slate that's flat.
Actually, there was this type of an animal, of a worm.
Oh, the
that,
shamir.
Yeah, the shamir. That was used to cut. Yeah. Okay. So we see that there is an understanding of the need for weaponry. At the same time, there is not any glorification of weaponry. Actually, there's a Mishnah in Shabbos that discusses a person wearing a weapon on Shabbos, and there's an opinion that says, oh, though that's his noi, that's glory, and therefore it should be allowed, and the rabbis rule that no, it's not glory, right? And therefore, it would not be allowed. Modern day, there's a tshuva from Rav Avadi Yosef Zatzal about soldiers who can't part with their weaponry, that it's illegal for them, understandably so. So they they can and do bring their weaponry into shuls, right? And if they can cover it up, they do. If not, they don't. But again, right, when it's necessary, so then it is used, but it's not something that we view. I think it was in Tunisia I was reading that the men, or one of the Middle Eastern countries where the men all walk around with a ceremonial sword, right? and that is a show of manhood. That is a show of glory, right? That is not the Jewish view, right? Eilev arechav, eilev asusim, not Hashem Hashem Elkeinu nazkir. We say in our davening every day. They with their horses and with their chariots, we by mentioning the name of God. That is our strength. Hakol kol Yaakov vayedayim midei Esav. The hands are the hands of Esav, but the voice is the voice of Jacob. Now, interestingly, we find in Shmuel, which is the bottom source on the first page there, Shmuel Aleph, the first book of Samuel, chapter 13. Uplishtim nesfu lilachem Yisroel. The Plishtim gathered to war against Israel. Shloshim elef rechev, v'sheish elefim parashim, 30,000 chariots, 6,000 riders. Va'am kachol shel sfat hayam, people like the sand by the sea. Va'yalu v'yachanu b'michmash kinmat Beit Aven, and they camped by Michmash to the east of Beit Aven. V'ish Yisrael ro kitzarlo. The people of Israel saw they were in a very difficult situation. Ki nigash ha'am. Right, we were oppressed there, and we started to hide in caves, mamarot, uvechavachim, in thickets of slaim, v'tzarchim, uvarot. In all these different places we started to hide. Why were we hiding? Why weren't we going out to war? So we jumped to verse 19, pasuk Yutet, v'charash lo yimatzeh b'chol Eretz Yisrael. There was not a smith to be found in all the land of Israel. Ki amru plishtim pen yasu evrim cherev o chanit. Exactly what the Second Amendment is talking about. The Plishtim prohibited there being any smiths in the land of Israel. All of our farming implements had to be sent out of Israel to be fixed, whatever it was, right? Because exactly this idea that there should not be any potential for the people to protect themselves, and the only ones, the Psukim go on to say, the only ones who had swords were Shaul and Yehonatan, his son, and a miraculous victory took place, and we threw off the oppression of the Plishtim. But it's fascinating to see, I'm sorry, this is from Rav Micha Cohen. That's where the vast majority of these Amara Makomos are from, Rav Micha Cohen. So we see this very idea of the Second Amendment that this was used to oppress, and we rose up against that. So therefore we see at this point that weaponry is something that is often necessary and therefore important, but it's not something that we glorify, and it's something that we wish we can do without, but as we will in the Messianic times. But until then, it's the reality that we face. So the different usages here in the United States, why do people want to have weaponry? Basically, it falls down into two main categories: recreation, right, including hunting or marksmanship, and self-defense. I would say those are the two main categories. How do we view that? So it's a little bit small, and I don't have an English translation on it, but there is a very well-known teshuva, halachic responsa from the Noda B'Yehuda in the 1700s. Ha-teshuva, Shalom la'hitzor of Eisa b'chukei char. Okay. Michtavo kibalti. I've received your letter, even though I don't know who you are, but I see you asked with reasoning, and my policy is to respond to all those who send questions. And the root of your question was about a certain person, that God had granted him a large estate, and he has villages there, and forests there. And in these forests there swarm all types, chayto ya'ar, all types of wild animals. And the question is he allowed to go by himself to shoot with kanas reifa, right, with poisoned arrows, whatever it is, using weaponry, latsud sayid, right, to go hunting there? Or is it prohibited for a Yisroel to do such a thing, either because it's causing tsar balei chayim, it's causing anguish to the animals, o mishum bal tashchit, or it's an issue of bal tashchit, of wanton destruction? That was the question that was posed.
It's one of the Noahide laws. Don't harm the animal.
No. One of the Noahide laws is to not eat a limb that was pulled from a living animal, which is extended to all types of non-purposeful anguish to an animal.
What if the person was going to eat?
Let's see. Ein lanu laharich bazeh. We don't need to be lengthy in our response. The Noda B'Yehuda writes, Kifar herich marai b'poskim v'ksavim simukuf hey, shekol davar sheyesh bo tzorech lahadam. Anything that is for a purpose, for a person's usage, there we don't apply this restriction, the prohibition of tsar balei chayim, causing anguish to a living animal. The gam lo shayach tsar balei chayim elo litzaro lanicho b'chayim. That's only when the plan is to leave it alive. But to kill animals for a purpose, there is no issue of bal tashchit or of tsar balei chayim, since it's being done for a purpose. V'amnan, but he says, ma'od ani tama. I wonder, I'm surprised, al guf hadavar, about the very heart of the matter here. V'lo matzino ish tzayid. Where do we find hunters? The like of Nimrod, the like of Esav. The ein zeh darchei b'nei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. This is not the ways of the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Upuk chazi lomar tivale utichadesh. Very interesting. In the laws of Shehechianu, so there Shulchan Aruch speaks about making a bracha on a new garment. And the Ramah, Rav Moshe Isserles, brings that there's a custom that people will say to one another when they get a new garment, Tivaleh u'tichadesh, right? Wear it out and get a new one, right? Meaning you should wear it well. You should have many years of good, healthy, vigorous usage, right? You should wear it out, right? And then get another one. Now the Ramah brings it that you should not say that on something that's made from the hide of an animal. Because the pasuk says, the verse says, "V'rachamav al kol ma'asav." God's compassion extends to all of His creations. Now the Ramah says that this seems a little bit weak, but that's because the Norvita writes, "She'eno chiyuv shebishvilo yamit behema." Who's to say that in order to get the hide, you have to actually kill the animal? There are many hides that are available from animals that have died, and you can use that. Nevertheless, the Ramah says that many people are careful not to say, wear it out and get a new one when it comes to something that came from an animal. But the Eich Yamit Ish Yisraeli Biyadayim Balechayim. How could a Jewish person go and kill a living creature with his hands below shum tzorech, for no need whatsoever? Rak ligmor chemdat zmano, right? But as a nice pastime, as an enjoyable pastime. Litasek bitzida, to be involved in hunting and trapping. He goes on to say, now if there is a reason, if the animals are attacking, that's something else. But he goes on to say, besides it not being a good Jewish thing to do, he goes on to say, actually it might be prohibited for another reason. You're putting yourself into a makom sakana. You're putting yourself into a place of danger. Now, if you're going hunting geese or ducks or turkeys or even deer, probably not such a danger. But other game, certainly it would be a danger. So we see clearly from the Nod de Yehuda this concept that recreational hunting, usage of guns recreationally for hunting, right? That is certainly something that is frowned upon, right? We're not saying it should be, we're not saying to prohibit it outright, right? Certainly, for others who want to do it, but that's not what we would be and what we should be. That shouldn't be our fun. I remember when I was engaged, and I went with Natalie and my father-in-law and some of the family. We went to this beautiful lake, and my father-in-law enjoys fishing, and the fish is large enough, right? Then they would prepare and eat the fish. So we're going fishing, a beautiful, beautiful, incredible lake in upstate New York. And we're fishing. And I catch a fish. And it's too small. So what do you have to do? You have to first get the hook out of its mouth and throw it back. And then we're going again. And I catch another fish. And it's too small. But this time it swallowed it. So you have to pull it out. And I said, why are we ruining a glorious day on a glorious lake and maiming these fishes as we're going along? And we just had a beautiful row around the lake. That was a lot more enjoyable for me. Okay. Now, that is if we're doing it for hunting. Recreationally for marksmanship, I don't see any source. I don't see any reason why that would be an issue. Right? Some people enjoy shooting a ball into the basket. Other people enjoy throwing a dart and trying to hit the bull's eye, as long as it's not actually a bull's eye, right? And some people enjoy shooting a highly powered rifle and hitting the target. Again, I wouldn't see any problem with that.
Isn't it how Esau died? They thought he was an animal.
Who? I think, according to, in the Medrash I'm familiar with, Esav died from Chushin, the son of Dan,
Then who was
taking off his head.
Somebody
Oh,
was like.
Cain. Yeah, we have this.
Oh,
Yes,
Cain.
yeah, we have that story there in the Torah.
Yeah,
Okay. Now, how about using it or having it in order to use it for self-defense? So we already had the source up above that Chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Yisrael, and we came out of Egypt armed, right? That was in order for self-defense and to conquer the land of Israel. Now, when it comes to self-defense, we had a whole issue on this. We had a whole other lunch and learn on this, on stand your ground, right? Where there, the Torah is very, very clear. If someone comes to kill you, beat him to it. Beat him to it. If the only way to stop him is by killing him, then that's what you must do. That is what you have to do. Not only that, but the Torah tells us that if a person breaks into your house, right, sneaks into your house, breaks into your house, and there the given assumption is that he knows that you might wake up or encounter him, and you're not going to stand idly by as he's standing there, and therefore you're going to attack him, and therefore he comes in there with the intent that he might have to take you down, right, and therefore you can take him down first. Unless you know for sure, unless it is barur kachama, barur kashemesh, as clear as day, that this is a person who will not harm you. And the Gemara says, what's the case there? If a father's breaking into the son's house, there the son knows his father will not kill him. If it's a son breaking into the father's house, there the father does not have that same confidence, actually, in the relationships. And I think all of us who are both fathers and sons know that the love of the parent to the child is greater than the love of the child to the parent. Okay, now, when it comes to self-defense, so we have here from the Rambam, but again, I mentioned before, Habab Machteret, someone comes through, we have the Psukim of the Torah, that someone comes to, and might be, where the assumption is he wants to hurt you, you have to be ready to defend yourself, and you should defend yourself. The Rambam, interestingly, speaking about the laws of the new moon sanctification, doesn't sound like very dangerous, right? But the witnesses who saw it had to travel, and they had to go traveling at night, and who knows what areas they're going through. So there the Rambam says, this is on the second side now, Rambam laws of new moon sanctification, Hayaha'ed Sharat HaChodesh, Belel Shabbat Cholef, the person's sword on a Friday night, and he's sick, Markivin Asal Chamor, we'll ride him on a donkey, even though it's Shabbos. We'll Mechalel Shabbos, we'll desecrate Shabbos in order to get to Yerushalayim, to deliver the testimony. Vafilu b'mita, will carry him in a bed. V'yeshlan orev baderech. Right, that's one of the terms that we mentioned in our Tfilat Haderech, in our Wayfarer's prayer, that God should save us from any type of orev baderech, right, from any sort of ambush on the way. If we're concerned that there might be an ambush on the way, lochim ha'edim biyadan klei zayan. Then the witnesses will take with them, they will take klei zayan, they will take weaponry along with them. So once again we see that weapons for self-defense is considered a legitimate need when there is such a need.
Rabbi, just quickly, this person who's going to Yerushalayim to testify to, was he appointed? Or?
Yes, divinely appointed. Once he saw the new moon, that's it. That's his appointment, and off he goes.
But I'm just curious, because to be Michal Shabbos, when there could be lots of other people.
Actually, the Mishnah there tells, Steve, we did the Gemara. The Mishnah tells that as they're traveling through, even if there are many, many people traveling through, one of the Tanaim said, well, we should stop them. We don't need them anymore. Let them not keep on traveling on Shabbos. And we said that then we'll be machshilan latid lavo. that's going to discourage them in the future. Next year, they might be the only ones who saw it. They're going to say, I'm not going to bother traveling. They got stopped and sent back in the middle. Why should I bother going? And they might be the ones. Therefore, they all go through. And we'll even ask them, even after we've already accepted testimony, other witnesses come, we'll go through a perfunctory evaluation of them just so they shouldn't feel, right? Shelo yetzu b'pachei never, I think is the term we use. They shouldn't leave feeling dejected that they traveled all this way for nothing.
This is a very high level of mitzvah then if you're getting through this.
Yes, that is true. Okay, so once again we see the importance of having the means to protect yourself. Someone very, very dear to me is a rather thin, not an overly powerfully physical female, and she lives in a neighborhood which is not the best of neighborhoods, and she's afraid someone's going to come into the house, and she has a shotgun, right, which is kept carefully, right, but you don't know, depending where you are, depending where you live, depending where you go, right, two of my sons, right, one who travels around some not such great neighborhoods, the other one who lives in Israel, lives in Samaria, so two of my sons carry guns. Right? And that the idea is for self-defense. Now, yes?
No, my kids lived in Malinette, Mass, which was mentioned, and men and women all carried benny packs and all guns, and they would go once a week to the shooting range to make sure that they knew what to do. My daughter-in-law, little Judy, would go every week to check on her shooting.
Yeah. Now, so again, we appreciate the need of using it for self-defense. We don't glorify it. We don't utilize it for maiming animals, for sport. But for self-defense, we do accept that there is an importance, and we rule accordingly. But how about restrictions? What do our sources tell us about restrictions that might be put on who gets guns, where guns are made readily available? Is it this carte blanche that whoever wants one can come get one or more than one? So, very interesting. The Mishnah in Makot, which is the next source, Makot is dealing with different things, but here we're dealing with the laws of a city of refuge. City of refuge is if a person killed someone else unintentionally. It wasn't a fluke accident. We call it manslaughter, but it wasn't intended. It was b'shogeg. So then he must go to a city of refuge, specific cities that were designated in the land of Israel, and there he would be safe from the Goel Hadam, from the relatives of the person who he killed. If he does not go to the Goel Hadam, so then his, so to speak, suspended sentence is no longer suspended, and his life may be taken. And the Mishnah or the Gemara there speaks about the way that the provisions that are made in this city of refuge to make sure that it is filled with people. It's not going to be a desolate area, and will bring in other people besides those who killed inadvertently to live there, and we'll lower mortgages, we'll make incentives over there in order to make it easier, to make sure that it's filled. We make sure that there is necessary goods that are sold there, that he doesn't need to leave the Ir Miklat in order to get essential items. And we starting over here in the Hebrew, it's the end, the last two words of that shortened first line. Aram alalu, these cities of refuge, ein osun atan lo tirim katanim. We don't make them into these little small areas, little krachim gedolim, nor large walled cities. Ela ayarot beinaniyot. We make them medium-sized cities. Ve'moshim etam ela b'makom mayim. They have to be established in a place where there's water. It has its own water supply. And if there is no water, it needs to be brought there. There needs to be markets there. Shuk. And it must be a populated area. If the population is dwindling, mosifin aleihen. Right? Then we add on. Nitmatu diyureim leviim lehem kohanim Yisraelim. Right? We'll bring there Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, right? All different, the cross section of Jews. And we don't sell weaponry there. Velo klei mitsuda, or trap gear. Divir of Nehemiah. The Chachamim will allow it. V'sham, however, they agree. Shein parsha b'tochem mitzudot. We don't have traps that are actually set there. Ve'im avshilin l'tochen chavalim. We don't twist, make the ropes, leave the ropes hanging about there. Kidei shelo tehei regel goel hadam mitsuya sham. We don't want to make it a place where the relatives of the person who was killed will be there. Will come across things, and it'll be they'll take advantage. On the spur of the moment, they'll be able to react and do something here to take this person's life. So we see that limitations are made in a place where we are concerned that hot-headed behavior might lead to a tragedy. Similarly, the Rambam, in his Hilchot Rotseach Ushmirat HaNefesh, which is the laws of murder and preservation of life, says, Kishem Sha'asru, Halacha 13 and 14, the very bottom of our sheet now, Kishem Sha'asru Limkor Lo V'Kolchavim, the same way that one does not sell weaponry to idolaters, Kach Asru Limkor Li Yisroel Shemoch Lo V'Kolchavim. You also have to be careful not to sell to an Israelite who's then going to serve as a middleman, an arms broker, and sell it to the idolaters. Umuchar limkor klei zayin l'chayil shel b'nei hamedina. We're allowed to sell weaponry to the soldiers of our country, m'nei shehem magin al Yisroel, because they are there in order to protect Yisrael. Yudalid 14. Kol sha'asul limkol v'kolchav masul limkol Yisrael shu listim. The same way that you can't sell to an idolater, you can't sell to a Jew who's a robber. You're going to be strengthening the hands of those who are doing averot, who are sinning, and you are enabling them to go ahead. So we see that there should be safeguards that are in place. You have to know who you're selling it to, and you have to know, as best as you can, what his intents are. Now, there's a very interesting article. I'm not sure exactly where, I saw this quote, I'm not sure where it's quoted from, so I'm not sure about all the statistics. But it says as follows. In the United States, the obtaining of a weapon by a civilian is seen, well, a lot of comparisons are made between the United States and Israel. Now, Israel, when someone starts shooting, he stops shooting pretty quickly, usually, because there are people around, be it army, be it police, be it civilians, who are armed and are trained and eliminate the threat, as that person should be eliminated as expediently as possible. I say everyone who wants to be a martyr, we should help him along his way.
Extrajudicial killings.
Yes. No, not extrajudicial, but if someone is murdering,
No, I was just joking.
someone's murdering,
That's what we're accused
Yeah.
of. Extrajudicial
Yeah.
killing of
Yeah.
Palestinians.
yeah. But if someone is murdering, then, wielding a knife, attacking people, so then you shoot to kill. You shoot. We did this last time. You shoot for the legs. Chances are you're not going to get, right? It doesn't work, right? And that's basic policing 101. That if someone is looking to kill, then you've got to stop them. Okay. But many comparisons are made. Now, it's interesting that in Israel we don't have these, we have terrorists, plenty of them, but we don't have the crazies who are going into schools. You know, we don't believe ayin hara. We don't have that. You do have that throughout Europe. It's not, they don't make as big deal about it as they do in America, but you do have that through Europe. Okay. In the United States, the obtaining of a weapon by a civilian is seen as a national right, right? Protected by the Second Amendment. In Israel, obtaining a weapon by a civilian is seen as a privilege. It's not easy for a civilian, even though they've gone through the army. I had this discussion with my son. Even though he was commander in the army. Even though they've gone through the army, it's not easy to get a weapon. It's not seen as a right. It is seen as a privilege. Therefore, the sum total of weapons in the hands of Israeli non-soldiers is, again, I don't know where to get the numbers from, is 170,000 out of a population of 7 million, which is about 2.5% of the population. 1 in 30 people.
Even smaller.
Amongst the civilians.
Among the civilians,
But everybody's
that's
a
not
soldier.
true.
It depends where you are. It depends where you are. In Meir Sha'arim, in Bayit Vegan, in Givat Mordechai, Meir Sha'arim, virtually no one has guns. Right? Now, in the United States, there are about 315 million legally purchased handguns in the hands of civilians. The same number of American citizens, or 100% of the population. Now, I imagine most of us here don't own guns. But for all of us that don't, there are people that own 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., etc. Again, I don't know the numbers. Okay? In Israel, 80% of the people who apply for a handgun for protection are turned down. It's interesting. 80% are turned down.
80%.
That's what it says. And I know when I was in Israel, I was visiting with my nieces and nephews, and one of them wanted a gun and needed to explain that they go visit their sister who's in Judea Samaria in order to get the gun. Otherwise, they would not be able to get the gun. In the United States, in most states, if a person buys a handgun from a private dealer, then the buyer does not even need a license and no background check is required. In Israel, automatic weapons are banned for private ownership. Right? You can't be a private owner of an automatic weapon. And it is rare that any person authorized to own more than one gun. Right? In the United States, the opposite is true. Most people who own gun don't own gun, but own guns. In Israel, applicants must undergo police screening and medical exams to determine their mental status before obtaining a license to own a gun. In addition, a need must be shown to own a gun in Israel, such as living in a settlement surrounded by a hostile Arab population. Right? So it really depends, I think, which areas you're talking about and which groups.
I really
Right?
think that first statistic is entirely specious.
I don't know. I don't know to be, but I will point out. I would agree with you that when you're anywhere in Israel, a lot more than 1 in 30 people are armed with a gun. But this is talking about the civilian population. Wherever you are in Israel, you're on a bus, there are soldiers. Wherever you are. It's a small country with a civilian army. So wherever you are, you see soldiers. A soldier is carrying their gun. Just about every restaurant pays to have an armed guard there. A mall. Schools. So a lot more, wherever you are, I would agree that a lot more than 1 in 30 people around you have guns. I would agree with that, but I don't know if that necessarily negates what we're saying here amongst the civilian population. Because wherever you are, sorry?
It's not part of this statistic.
Correct.
No, but
Correct.
You take the mall, for example, the guard at the entrance is armed, but the
5,000 people inside of that mall, you'll probably find less than 1 in 30 with a gun.
I don't know. Could be. Could be.
That's why
Oh,
this
so is that written?
looks okay.
Again, this was part of an article that I found that was a whole piece on this, and he quoted. I don't know where he quoted it from.
What's the publication date? Because it sounds like.
Again, I don't know where.
It's
Now,
not
in the
important.
US, most laws, you do have to have the background check and.
Could be.
It's
Could
not
be.
important that this-
Could be. So, in summary, what we have over here is, I think, very, very clear, and what seems to be a very even-headed approach to the issue, right? Guns should not be used to harm, right? Guns, it's important that there be the right for arms, right? As we saw from the time of Shmuel, this was a real concern in terms of people having the right to defend themselves. I'm not all that concerned here in the United States about the need to protect ourselves from the government, right? To me, that seems a little bit fringe, okay? But certainly in certain areas, right? A person could understandably, it doesn't seem fringe to me, to feel the need to carry around a concealed weapon and to have it in order to protect himself and those around them, right? I definitely can understand. To me, of course, everyone thinks that wherever they think that's normal, and everyone who's more conservative is a crazy rightist, and everyone who's more liberal is a crazy leftist, right? And who's normal? Myself. Thank you, right? Everyone defines himself as being normal, but in my mind, the concern about the government becoming tyrannical and right, to me that seems a little bit fringe. The need to protect oneself does not seem so fringe to me at all, especially with what's going on. And I would personally feel more comfortable and confident if normal people had guns, right? Because right now, the crazies and the terrorists have no problems getting the guns, and I don't think our tighter laws is going to prevent them from getting the guns either, right? That's my personal opinion. But to use it, certainly we should be as careful as we can be in terms of who are given guns, in terms of background checks, in terms of mental stability. Certainly, that needs to be done. You know, I know there's a lot of talk in the news about a person who's on the no-fly list, right? But, to me it makes sense that those people should not be given guns, right? The argument against it is, well, those lists are not very accurate, so once again you're depriving citizens of their Second Amendment right. I would say if they're on the no-fly list, let the burden of proof be upon them that they should be eligible. But again, that's all my personal opinion. But what we clearly see from the sources is, yes, for self-defense. No, it's not something that we glorify. We should not use it in order to cause harm to other creatures, right? And we all look forward to the time when the swords will be beaten into hoes and the spears into plowshares, right? And there should be no need for any of these things. Yes.
So you've covered the who, but not the what. I mean, the scope. What about, should there be controls for automatic weapons, or is that really a need for self-defense?
I would agree. I would agree with the way this article termed it in Israel. To give individuals automatic weapons, right? To me, that seems to be a bit of a stretch.
I know that here a lot of, well, not a lot, but there are people who have managed to get weapons illegally, easily. Can they do that in Israel?
I'm sure. I'm sure. There's. I mean, no laws are completely foolproof. Robert.
Probably no
Robert, your hand was up before. Robert, your hand was up before.
What about gun-free zones? Should we go into gun-free zones and assume we're not going to get shot, or should we? You know what I mean? What about those?
Can you define also gun-free zone and free zones at the same time?
I think the bad guys
Just go together.
aren't looking and saying, "Oh, this is a gun-free zone,"
This is a good place to run.
right? So I'm not so clear about the efficacy of the gun-free zones. I agree that a school should be a gun-free zone, but it needs to be that there are some there who are trained, right? Because otherwise, as we saw tragically in Sandy Hook and other places, then they're sitting ducks.
How about a shul? Should that be, besides a soldier who has to carry the gun?
I think not necessarily. I think there's a need for self-defense. The person is trained and able. I think they should have it. Okay, my friends, we will call it over here.